Okay, about 2 weeks ago, I responded to an ad on Craigslist for a lot of comics, about 430 assorted different comics from late 70s, early 90s. The majority of them are 80s and DC comics. And it took me a while to sort through them, and now I can actually show what I got. And the guy originally was asking for $150, but I managed to talk him down to 130. For the most part, there's there's a lot of long runs, but a few things that I like that I found. So let's look them over a bit. Now there were a few little things like this, some little digests. Those things, they'll just be some reading copies. A few issues of Robin. Nothing extraordinary. Some stuff I already had. There was some minor Marvel, mainly, stack of the official handbook. Nothing exciting there. Then there's some other things here that I got. Okay, let's see. Marvel Superhero Summer Special. Iron Man. Most of these are pretty beat up, but, got some nice comics. Godzilla, King of Monsters. Heavily beat up. X Factor. King Size Annual Avengers. I did like finding this older Ghost Rider issue in here. One of my favorite characters. Moon Knight, another one of my favorites. Kind of beat up, as you can see. Green Goblin, #1. Already had it. No big deal. Can't remember which comic this was. I think it was like, I don't know. All information I can find from it are gone. Marvel Saga. Micronauts. Okay, let's see what else was in here. Older Silver Surfer. Few issues. Couple issues Captain America. Nothing really rare, just But doing the math on all the comics, I think it came out to something like 29 cents a comic. So, not bad. There were a few comics here and there that are actually interesting I saw, and I'll get to them later. Right now, just going through the Marvel stuff that I got. Now that is the entirety of all the Marvel comics that I wound up getting in that huge Craigslist lot. Now the rest is all just pure DC. Let's see. Let's start here with my Justice League stack. Justice League of America. Mr. Miracle passing away. Which you'll see later on. There are some Mr. Miracle comics in here. These are a little nicer condition. Now I did notice in some of these I got different versions. See? The newsstand edition and the direct edition. So, that was something I liked. As I'm starting to get a little more serious about my collecting, I'm starting to pick up a little bit more on other things. For the most part, I collected mainly variant issues and a few #1s and things. I got out comics a few years ago, and I'm just getting back into it. It's probably about my 3rd or 4th year back into collecting comics, and it's probably about my 10th year actually getting into reading comics again. I used to collect comics a lot when I was younger, and this actually is one of the comics I used to have when I was younger. Not this exact issue, but you know, I had a copy of this one. Most of what I had were early 90s, late 80s. Green Lantern was what I started with, passed down from my uncle. And then I got a little bit into Spider-Man around the time that Carnage premiered, actually. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of that issue anymore, and it was, I want to say, near mint. Shame, wish I'd kept it, but oh well. There was a slight defect on the cover, but for the most part, I took care of my stuff. A couple more Justice League comics. Justice League Europe. There are so many comics to go through. It took me so long just to sort through them in order, and now it's going to take so much longer just to go through and show them off on here. I think I'm roughly a quarter of the way through the stacks. Alright. See which stack will I start with first. Okay, let's put the Justice League away. If I do better at this channel, then obviously I will get better at editing, and you will not be hearing me doing this commentary right now, but if it does well and people enjoy the commentary, perhaps I'll keep it in. Okay, Dow H for Hero. Got a few issues of this, not many. You know, 1 or 2 issues of Wonder Woman. You know, you could tell they were really into their Eclipso crossover. I noticed a few annuals in here. I remember that event. Wonder Woman annual. Now, if I remember the artist, yes, recognize this style. George Perez. It'd be nice to finally have something his to have signed. I see him often at conventions, and I have read a lot of his stuff, especially Teen Titans, but unfortunately I just don't own any physical copies of it, anything he's done. Now, this was nice to see too. Warlord annual. This guy was definitely more of a DC fan, as I could tell going through here. What was nice about this lot that I bought is I got a few little runs here and there, a few solid runs. Most of the runs I have in this collection are from issue 2 onwards. Unfortunately, there aren't many number 1s in here, which was a shame because it would have made a huge difference, but either way. Some more Blue Devil. Throughout here, there are quite issues of Blue Devil, and I think there was a few Booster Golds, and I forgot who else. Now, when I find it, I see it coming up in the stack. There were some things I found interesting, and they were these. Notice that corner? There were a few in here, actually, of the Whitman comics. No, I haven't had time to really look them up to see which ones are worth which, but I know a few of them are actually kind of rare. And this is my first time actually having anything, you know, any Whitman comic, I guess, depending on how you look at variants. But, you know, there's a few, so I'll probably set these aside. Look them up. There's Hawkman. Showcase. Again with this Eclipso. Now if you hear any background noise, I apologize. My neighbors tend to be loud. I was about to start this recording earlier, but an ice cream truck came by and they tend to park right outside my building. There's a lot of children in this neighborhood, and he finds it's the best part of where to get them all to accumulate. And I also had this. As I said, I was a Green Lantern fan in the early 90s, late 80s. Calypso. So I do remember when Hal Jordan went, here we go, when he became Parallax. Now this is one of the issues I had that was passed down from my uncle. Really got me into Green Lantern. So I grew up, Hal Jordan. Guy Gardner was one of my favorites. I wasn't I didn't know as much about John Stewart, but most people really wouldn't really get to know him very much probably until the Justice League cartoons. For me, it wasn't until this Green Lantern miniseries, Mosaic. That's where I really got to know him. That and during Blackest Night crossover. More Green Lantern. Then of course, when I continued on with comics, the Green Lantern that I wound up knowing really well was Kyle Rayner. Unfortunately, it was a little bit after that, and probably a year or two when the comics crash started to occur, 93, 94, that I got out of comics. Now, it had nothing to do with the market, but with the fact that my local comic shop had closed down. Now, there's a little story behind that. What happened was that someone had broken in and robbed the place, and the owner was never able to recoup their losses, so he was never able to reopen the store. Now, being the early 90s, internet wasn't that big of a thing. Neither was mail order, Emerald Dawn, one of the first Green Lantern stories I ever got into. As I was saying, since there wasn't any internet back then, or at least nothing beyond dial-up or anything like Amazon, or just basically anything where you could order comics online, I just fell out of comics for a while. Then for a while I got into mail order with, I believe it was American Entertainment, and then they changed their name to something else. I can't remember what it was. But I really didn't care for their service. A lot of times orders get canceled, they wouldn't order enough. Since it was mail order, the longer it took to send in my order, the longer it took to hear back, and sometimes I missed the deadline and wouldn't get it. But as some of these other videos of mine that I've done show, the majority of the comics I get now, if I don't get them on eBay, once in a while I'll get them at my local comic shop, but I will usually get them on TFAW, thingsfromanotherworld.com, and have them shipped to me once a month. My whole pull list for the month will just pop up. Now this is what I talked about earlier. Direct edition, newsstand edition. I love the older Green Lantern comics. Couple more. Now when I have time, I'm going to have to bag and board all these. Unfortunately, as it is, I have something like maybe 10 bags and boards left. And as I've shown, that's not nearly enough for the whole collection. Now the funny thing is, that's not even all the Green Lantern. This person was obviously a Green Lantern fan. As behind this camera, I have two other stacks, which I will get to in a moment. I do not like putting these comics back in this box in this condition. I prefer for them to be, vertical, not horizontal. Now it's not very good for the spine. I know some people also like to alternate the way they stack them, like front to back. That way there's not all that pressure, or it's not uneven in the box due to the spines. But I like to be able to look at the comic when I see it. it makes it easier for me to find what I'm looking, and just, I don't know, visually it's more appealing to me. As I said, a lot of Green Lantern. Now most of these are probably worth a few cents. You know, maybe there'll be a few issues here and there. Now this cover I like a lot. There'll be a few issues here and there which will probably be worth, you know, pretty penny here and there. Like the Whitman editions will probably be worth something. But even if they're not, you know, they're just hard to find. It's nice to have something like that add to my collection. So much Green Lantern. Green Lantern Corps, Green Lantern Quarterly, Green Lantern Annual, Green Lantern Emerald Dawn. What's nice is I remember having this issue. I remember where I even bought this issue too. My original copy, I had bought it in Sacramento at their swap meet. Sacramento, California. Years and years ago when I was probably 10 years old. There was someone selling so many old comics, and I was just reading Green Lantern at the time, and I had wanted to know about all these older lanterns. And I loved that I was able to pick up so many comics for like, you know, a quarter or $1. Can't remember what it was back then. Even then, when you're that age, you don't really pay attention to the cost of things. This is another one I had. I always loved anthology books too. That's one thing I liked about the anniversary issue and several of the annuals. I always felt like I got my money's worth, you know? You wouldn't get just one long story, you get several different little stories here and there. It's a good way for other characters to shine a bit. John and Guy. Hal in the background. Here's my man. I wonder who does this cover. Let's see. Colorist is Tolan. Patterson's an inker. I really like that cover. It was 86. Okay. Yeah, so I was 5 at the time. Yeah, I definitely was not collecting comics at that time. At that time, I was probably watching G.I. Joes and Transformers. Getting ready for preschool naps. Right there, that should give you an idea about my age. Mid-30s. So much more Green Lantern. I feel like I should probably do this a little faster. Or I should just make this into a 2-part video. It's so weird for me to see John with the mask. I'm so used to seeing him without it. I think the only thing weirder would be if I saw Guy with mask. And speak of the devil. I had not noticed this cover. And I'm assuming that's Guy on the cover. Yep. Earth's 3 Emerald Warriors. Right at the top. So yeah, that's gotta be Guy. So. Even though I went through this, I never noticed that cover. Mainly when I was looking through this collection, I was looking for anything that just stood out. Which, you know, the Whitman covers, as I mentioned, were the things that stood out to me. They were something I had never heard of up until a few weeks ago when I researched it slightly. And when I say research, I mean go on Google. Alright. Now the rest of Green Lantern. Starro. See, what issue is that? 158. What year? Doesn't say. Well, see, I remember growing up with that. That little buddy right there. It's weird to think a lot of kids reading comics will never know about that. Comics Code Authority. I really never understood the significance of it until, what was it, last WonderCon or Stan Lee's LA Comic Con last year, or WonderCon this past year, where there was a Comic Book Legal Defense Fund was doing a panel explaining the history of it. Oddly enough, I wound up writing a paper for my popular culture class, and one of the things I touched upon was about the Comic Code Authority and about how the history behind it and what led to it and the whole thing with comics being banned and EC Comics, and there's just so much touched on. See, some of these I kind of want to read them, but I also want to preserve them. This is probably why I've always done a combination of collecting physically and reading digitally. Like, to the side of me there are about, what was it, 10 short boxes almost completely full of comics, all bagged and boarded, and a few CGC comics on top. I like Discover a lot. And all those comics are in pretty good condition. A lot of them are signed, and I don't read any of them because I have a digital copy. It allows me to preserve them and enjoy them at the same time. And if you love a comic, I do believe you should support it, buy it, support the artists, support the writers, just whatever you can do. I don't advocate downloading scans off the internet. When you can, use Comixology. You have some of the money, go to a local comic shop. My local comic shop is about 30-40 minutes away, and I can't exactly make it there all the time. The only day off I have if they're open is Saturday, and I would prefer not to go all the way over there and why not buy anything. If I have the day off, usually due to a holiday, as long as it's not a federal holiday, then they'll be open and I can just go and browse around and take my time. Ooh, that Green Lantern stack is getting small. Okay, what year is this one? Another issue of Starro. This is 1980. Ooh, some of these you can see are pretty beat up. I did notice that none of them have any writing, which is good. I noticed as a kid, that tends to be a bad thing. Well, not, it's always a bad thing, but it tends to be a bad thing that's pretty common for children to do, especially if you have siblings, which I guess thankfully I never did. Couldn't help but notice that. How times have changed. But anyways, when you're younger, especially if you have siblings, you tend to write your names on things to kind of show it's yours. You know, you want to mark away your own little piece. This is missing a cover. Well, it has part of a cover, but it's stapled. So it's issue 126. Ugh. This one's in poor shape too. This one's like barely hanging. Well, I don't know. Ooh, chunk missing on the back. This one, look at that spine. I'll say this, every comic has had all their pages. One or two have missed a cover, but they all had their pages. I mean, obviously none of these are, you know, exactly CGC worthy. And then again, anything could be CGC worthy. Especially if you treat it as more of a personal thing than an investment, which is what I try to do. A comic that may personally mean something to me that I want to protect, I'll get CGC'd, but I won't necessarily get something CGC'd with the idea that it'll go up in value. For example, my She-Hulk #1 signed by Stan Lee. I got that CGC'd because that is the first time I met Stan Lee, and I thought it would be the last. It wasn't. Wound up seeing him 2 more years later at his own convention. But he's getting up there in age, and as I say, there's a good chance I may not be able to get his signature again. Knock on wood. You know, we all want Stan to live forever, but, you know, the man's been through a lot. He's 95, last I heard. But anyways, I got that comic CGC'd because of the character and because it meant a lot to me. It was also, was it the first time? Yes, it was the first time I went to San Diego Comic-Con. I had only went for 1 day, but I made it count. Okay, let's see. What will I go through first in this stack? Let's try this stack. Okay, here's some Blue Beetle. Now this guy had a decent run of Blue Beetle going on. Unfortunately, he didn't have the first issue. I think he had everything up to issue 2. 3. And here it is, issue 2. Now there is some more Blue Beetle, but it's in another stack. I just happened to divide this stack weird. Firestorm. Issue 4. 3rd annual. Felt a little thick. I thought there was an insert for a moment. As far as I know, inserts were uncommon back then. Another Firestorm. Firestorm's a character I haven't really got into too much, but yeah, I would like to find out more about. I like the idea of him. Know about him, Legends Tomorrow, and from playing Injustice 2. Though he's not my personal character that I like using. I'm more of a Aquaman, Black Manta, Red Hood. You know, one of those. Though in the first one I really did like using Batgirl. And of course Aquaman. Oh, what's this? Oh, Firehawk. Yeah. See, look at the cover. At first I was thinking that was Martian Manhunter. Which wouldn't make sense to me since Martian Manhunter and fire, they don't gel. Oh well. I'll look through it later. Ah, here it is. It's in the previous issue. Parasite. Yeah, I think it's a different Parasite from the one I recall from Superman. That character was purple, I believe. So, who knows? Could have changed. Could have just been another character with the same name. Now, 2 copies of the same comic, and from what I can tell, they are both, you know, the same edition. I can't notice any difference. One's not a foreign version. Not one's not a Mexico version or anything. Which I know some people will accept those, but I don't. For a while I've been looking for a copy of NYX number 3. First appearance of Laura Kinney, aka X-23. I have trouble finding it. And there's also, I can't remember the comic, but it's Harley Quinn, I want to say number 25 or it's number 1, I can't remember, but it's Adam Hughes variant cover. And it's such a beautiful cover. But the problem is, I can't find a US edition of it. I can find a Mexico edition for it, which still is a little costly. But I would prefer, you know, the American. Or the US edition, at least. More Firestorm. I like this cover quite a bit. What was it? Cohen and Jansen. It's another thing. I'm getting a little more familiar with artist names and writers. Since I joined into comics later, there's a lot that I don't know about. And I would like to fix that when I can. So someday I'm going to have to see about buying a whole bunch of trades and catching up and maybe learn a little bit more about the history of comics. Now, I've learned a little bit more about the impact that Neal Adams had on the industry. I've got to meet the guy. Nice guy. Prices are a little higher than I'd like to get a commission from him or even an autograph. But still, you know, he did a lot for the industry. Another Firestorm. Alright. That finishes up a third of stack number 2. Now for the other half. Now this, he has quite a bit of a run of Blue Devil. Two copies again. Now as you can tell, they both look to be the same edition. So, nothing exciting there. Two different editions of this one. Blue Devil number 19. Probably in, you know, good, fair condition. Another Blue Devil. And here we go. Another one. Two different versions. Two different editions, I mean. I noticed a lot of his collection was around Infinite Crisis. And there are a few issues in here of Infinite Crisis. Unfortunately, not the first few issues, but around the last 4 or 5. Again, 2 more editions. I would really like to know why the guy bought it from has these different versions. No, he didn't strike me as a collector, given what he had. And it looked like he probably read them when he was younger. And from the conversation I had from him, that seemed to be the case, and they were just collecting dust. I don't think he was hard up for cash or anything, or knew really what he had, but from what he told me, he did go to a comic shop and did inquire a little bit about the condition of them. So the majority of them were, you know, a 4. Now there are some which I would say 7. Nothing I would say is mint in here. Far from it. Different edition, but only one cover, or one copy. But he probably tried to sell them over there at the comic shop in Fresno, which is where I picked these up. It's about an hour, 10 minutes from me. I was already going to be there for business, so I figured might as well see what the guy had. Here we go. Here's the rest of the Blue Beetle. The rest of that run I was talking about. And I could tell he probably just read them as a kid. They just collected dust. Well, not as a kid. The guy was older than me. I'd say he probably read them. Okay, given his age, how old they are, 20, 30. Yeah, I'd say probably late teen, early 20s is when he was reading these. And given that the older comics in this collection seem to be the ones falling apart, and the ones that are late 80s, those are the ones in better condition. I guess I can show progression from when he was younger, didn't really take care of them, to as he got older, the ones that are newer are much better condition. Which makes sense. Now, if he was a collector, I would assume he would have known to bag and board all these comics. That was something even I knew as a child. I don't know why, I was just very particular. I like to take care of my stuff. I didn't like to make a mess. All of my action figures had every single accessory. I kept the blister pack for them. I didn't keep them in the container, but I kept every little thing. My G.I. Joes, I kept the little cutouts with their stats. Here we go. Another stack. And from the looks of it, I think the bottom had some more Blue Devil. This. Flash. Annual. Another Flash Annual. You know what, let's do this. If I adjust the camera like so. There we go. I just saved so much more time. And effort. Excuse me with this, I just literally bought this tripod yesterday and I'm figuring it out a little. Tripods aren't exactly difficult, but still, I don't want to position anything wrong and my camera tumbles to the ground and, well, there's a credit card payment for nothing. Nice, I like this cover quite a bit. Wish it was in better condition. It doesn't have a lot of Flash. The Flash wasn't anyone I really got into too much. I had a few issues. Since a lot of his comics, they crossed over with Green Lantern, so for me to know what was going on, I had to read some of his comics. The other stuff I collected at the time was, as I was saying, Spider-Man. I had the entire run of the regular Spider-Man series, a majority of Web Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, a huge chunk of Amazing Spider-Man. I had a few Batman comics just before and after Nightfall issue of Legion. More Legions, or, oh sorry, Legends. Was that one before? Was that Legions or, no? That was Legends. There's Captain Marvel, or he'll be known in most of the world, Shazam. Now I grew up knowing it was Captain Marvel, but I'm not as attached to him going by the name. I'm fine with him going by, you know, Shazam. Makes sense given the fact that he's shouting out, Shazam! Booster Gold. Few issues. Now, he had a nice run of this too, but unfortunately, he did not have number 1. I think his run started with issue 2 until somewhere in the 20s. It would have been nice to just pick up like one little gem like that, but oh well. It is what it is. I looked through the comics before I bought them. I saw a few things of interest. I had the money to burn. I realized that how much each comic cost by how much I was spending, I wasn't going to lose much. That if just a handful of the comics were a decent value, then I would have made my money back. Though, as I said, I'm not in it to make money. It's just, I like collecting. Anything I don't want, I can always just trade out or sell to get what I do want. Now, I do have a stack of duplicate comics or comics they don't want. Someday I will do something with them, who knows. If this channel ever takes off, maybe I'll do grab bags and just give them out as prizes. So much booster gold. Now, I do not know where the other Whitman covers are. And I can't remember what they are. Ah, here's the Blue Devils. What they are. 2 copies. Same edition. But I believe they were something like DC Comics Presents or DC Team Up. Something like that. It wasn't a regular series like Superman or Batman. Which I got a few Superman issues in this lot, but I don't think I got any Batman last I saw. More Blue Devil. Blue Devil. Now this is a character I do not know anything about, so I'll have to look up some information about him. You know, oh, Blue Devil and Firestar. You know, find out a little bit more about him. Find out where he is currently in the DCU. Is he currently around? Who knows? There's a lot of characters that disappeared with the New 52 and then completely disappeared when Rebirth. Well, some of them came back with thanks to Rebirth. You know, Wally West, or Redhead Wally West. Ginger Wally West. Deadman. Boston Brand. I like the character. I'm not as versed on him. The majority of my knowledge came from reading Blackest Night and Brightest Day, which are Green Lantern crossovers, and partially why I got back into comics. I had heard about it and it just drew me to it. But the storyline that first got me back into comics, I believe, was World War Hulk. It was at Toys R Us, which we all know what's happening to Toys R Us now. They're going away. But I was there with my roommate at the time. He was there for a job interview and I drove him, so I'm just driving around, you know, trying to kill time. I decided to go inside, look around the store, and then that's when I saw some of the action figures. Here we go. Mr. Miracle. Love him. Swamp Thing. And I saw the action figures, and I saw, you know, some of the Marvel action figures. Saw the Hulk one, and I wonder, this looks interesting. Like, what's World Breaker Hulk? What's World War Hulk? What's Planet of the Hulks? All these action figure lines, which I, you know, these versions of the Hulk I never heard of. So then I looked into it and read the storyline, and wow, I just got pulled back into comics. But the way it got back in was, since comics were now available digitally, you know, Comixology, if you have an Amazon Prime subscription and you decide to get Kindle Limited, there's comics on there you can read too. And that's a good way to catch up. Couple World's Finest. Now I think 1 or 2 of these were Whitman's. I can't remember. Guess not. Yep, here's another flash I missed earlier. Again, Eclipso. Was that even a major storyline? Like, it only ran through the annuals. I don't think it was really that big of a deal. Alright. Now we're coming up on the final stack. I can already see what's at the top of it, and can anyone guess what the storyline's going to be about? If you said Eclipso, you were correct. Ah, here we go. I see what's at the top of this stack. It'll have to be a surprise, though. Alright. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that there is a huge stack of what was it? What was it? DC's Who's Who. Unfortunately, like quite a bit in the collection in this lot, which I am not interested in at all. So I will not bother going through and showing it off. I never really cared for like those Marvel Universe handbooks or anything. They're just kind of like skinny encyclopedias. I mean, they were interesting to read at the time, but as I got older and finding out what retcons and reboots were, they lost their appeal to me. It's kind of hard to stay invested in a world when everything changes and you don't have the same characters around anymore. Alright. Secret Origins. Green Lantern and Sandman. It's pretty cool looking. Halo and Batman. Crimson Avenger. Don't know who that is. Firestorm. Shazam! Blue Beetle. I like that it has two versions of them. Of course, no Jaime. Superman. My man Aquaman. Cosmic Boy. Don't know who that is. See, costume. I'm assuming he's a Legion member. Aquaman. Now this, I already had this mini-series, the complete set already of it. And now I have a nearly second complete set. Well, no. Wait, this was a, 4-part series, and I did get all 4 parts, but unfortunately, the copies I already had are in better condition. This other one, don't know what it is. Okay, home stretch. Let's go through the next stack, which appears to be Superman, Man of Steel, Man of Steel, Man of Steel 4, of miniseries, but still. Man of Steel 3, 2, and this is neat. Number 1. Oh, look at that! Eclipso. Superman Annual. Another Superman Annual. Action Comics. Action. Now, I think I had this cover, but I don't know. It just looks familiar. Superman and Etrigan. New Gods. Another Superman. Here we go. Another Whitman. Action Comics. It's not in great condition, but as I said, set that aside. It's something unique. Another one. Now I know there is in Action Comics or Superman Whitman variant that's rare, so if that's it, that's cool. Of course, it's not in great condition, so it would be more of a novelty to have, just as something rare. Yeah, Eclipso. Eclipso must have really been rocking that kid's world at the time. Oh, this cover, of course, Jerry Ordway. Look at that. I kind of want to set this aside just to have, something to just put up on the wall. Maybe put that on a, bag and board it, put it in the top loader. Another Eclipso. A few more annuals. So right now that brings the Whitman editions up to 3. Two Superman Action Comics, and another one's, well, if you look at the cover, it says Whitman Comics Presents, but it's DC. Oh, I saw what was behind this. Another one. This one's in poor shape. Look at that. Look at that corner. Yeah. I hate it when it's like that. I just want to bend it back, but I'm afraid it'll rip and... Ugh. Well, at least you can see he enjoyed them growing up. You can see a lot of love went into these comics. That is something I remember from my childhood, and I'll never forget. Is just being able to read comics and just relax. All right, here we go, and this is what I was surprised to find in here: a couple of issues of Crisis of Infinite Earths, issue 12. Now, the whole run was not in here, just like the last few issues, but still, it defined the 80s. Part 11, Part 10, Part 9. Now there's one particular issue that I remember from this because of the cover, and I'm going to be on that soon. Issue 8, and here it is. Issue 7. Now this I kind of want to set aside. And I will. Just because it, you know, I've always loved that cover, and, you know, Death of Supergirl. Demon. Miniseries, I guess about Etrigan. Issue 2. Ooh, issue 1. Ah, Matt Wagner. I always loved Matt Wagner's stuff on Mage. Yeah, I know he's known a little bit more for Grendel, but I don't know. Grendel I could never get into too much. I was always more of a Mage character back with Comico. Doom Patrol. I've read a little bit of the current run that's being written by Gerard Way. Young Animals. I've enjoyed it. Manhunter, Jonah Hex. The 80s were a different time. More Secret Origins. Dr. Midnight. Guardian. Uncle Sam. Alan Scott. And the Creeper. Adam Strange. Dr. Colt. Knew Adam Strange's, but not the Colt. Here we go. Our Man. Knew who he was. Warlord. I didn't know until I got this collection who he was. Dead Man and the Spectre. Actually looks interesting. Suicide Squad. Nightwing and Johnny Thunder. I've heard of before. Challengers of the Unknown. Hawkman. Phantom Stranger. Another comic. Alright. Home stretch. Very, very small stack coming up. Now this is the last of what I got in that lot. I would like to do more sales like this and just buy huge lots. I find I could typically get something good doing this. Now when I got out of comics, I sold my collection probably, I want to say 9 years ago. Now I said I got back into comics 10 years ago, but that was reading, not collecting. At the time, I was a college student, wasn't working, and my roommate was not contributing very much, so, you know, rooms being taken up by things you don't use anymore, you need money, so I wound up selling what had to be probably about 4 or 5 short boxes full of comics, with a few of them were being complete runs for 80 bucks. Now, just for that Amazing Spider-Man first appearance of Carnage, I can't remember the issue right now, it's 360 something, 3 something, I don't know. Now that alone would account for so much of that money. and the second appearance, third appearance, and these were all first editions in great condition, with the exception of that first appearance of Carnage, where I had a very, very small, probably 16th inch by 1/16 inch little piece of the cover that peeled off thanks to a piece of tape that got stuck to it when I was putting it back into the bag and board. Otherwise, impeccable. Ah, look at that. Teen Titans. There's a few of them in here. Now I'm guessing that, yeah, I was going to say, I'm guessing there's going to be another Eclipso. And there we go. Superpowers. Now I think I had one more Whitman in here. I may be wrong. Captain Atom. Captain Atom. More Captain Atom. First learned about this character through Justice League United, or no, Justice League Unlimited, the animated series, which I loved at the time because it was a good way to get a lot of characters, you know, some of their own time that normally wouldn't be able to support themselves. Like Huntress, I don't think a standalone Huntress series would do well, but, you know, pair her up with Phantom Stranger and there you go. You know, you get an exciting time and you get to learn about 2 new characters. I guess that's why I always liked anthologies, because it made it a little easier transition into Eclipso. It made it easy transition into learning about new characters. Like if there's a story about one character in there you knew about, you always learn about the others, and you thought to yourself, well, if I never cared for it, at least there's some sense of familiarity for me. That's why always Green Lantern annuals always worked for me with those anthologies. There'd be a tale about Hal or, you know, John Stewart in there, or even Guy. And then there'd be another tale about Chip or Kilowog or even some other Lantern I'd never heard of. I remember one story had to do with this Lantern that was a spider and how he winds up dying in a yellow spider web. Yep. Amethyst. Hunger. Heroes Against Hunger. I'd heard of this before. And 2 more issues left. Wild Dog number 4 and Wild Dog number 3, who I recall the character from my experience watching Arrow. Now that is the entirety of the comic lot. 430 comics, give or take. The guy said 430 plus. Now I need to find some other way to store them, because for now my short boxes are full. I just rearranged my room, so I live in the studio, so I don't really have any place to put them right now. That box at the bottom right here is full.